Well, good morning, wherever you are in the world. Good morning, good evening. It's Adam Harrison here from Birdwood Guitars, and you are listening to the Cigar Box Guitar Builder. Today, I have the pleasure of speaking with Blues Boy Jag, Bill Jagitsch, today. Blues Boy, well, Bill has been one of those people that I've always known about for years and years and years, ever since I first got into building and playing cigar box guitars. And I'm really excited to be having a chat with him today. Hoping that Joe Altin is able to join us today. But Joe may have gotten caught up, but we'll see during the interview if I'm able to catch up with him. Again, a huge thank you to Ben C.B.Gitty Baker and the team over there at C.B.Gitty for sponsoring our show. It is greatly appreciated, and I know in this day and age, with things going the way they are and all that sort of stuff, he and the team there have been doing a really fantastic job. So a very big thank you to the guys there. Remembering, if you want to support this show, the best way to do it is very simply just tell your friends. It's the easiest way to support this show. Tell your friends, let them know where to find the show. Obviously on iTunes, Podbean, YouTube. It now uploads to YouTube as well. And of course on the Podbean app. The Podbean app is very easy to download. You can download it on Apple and Android. And it's just Podbean, one word. And yeah, it's super easy to use. And obviously there's a lot of other podcasts out there that are great to listen to. I listen to podcasts all the time on my way to work. But this is the only official YouTube. This is the only official podcast for cigar box guitars. So and we've been going since 2016, and it's with thanks to you guys who are listening that we continue spreading, the word about how awesome cigar box guitars are. So, all right, enough of my yapping. Let's get in contact with Bill and have a chat with Bill.
Okay.
All right, guys. So here we go. Bill Jagitsch, how are you?
I'm doing good. How are you?
Very, very well. It always seems weird doing that, doesn't it? Because we've just said hello and how are you before. But this is for our dear listeners out there in the world. Bill, wow! For me, having a chat to you was actually a pretty cool thing. I first came across you when I first started building cigar box guitars back in, I think, 2013 or something like that. 2013, 2014.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And it was on that documentary. Was it Songs Inside the Box, or I think that one?
Yeah.
Might have been that when you had that cowboy hat on. You had the black cowboy hat. You still got it?
Yep. No, that one fell apart a long time ago. Too many gigs.
But that's
too much sweat.
That's probably where I first saw you. And
cool, yeah.
And obviously through Facebook and seeing you as well. And you do a lot, man. You're a very, very busy fella.
Well, it kind of turned out that way because when I quit my last job, I had already been making the cigar box guitars, and so I just kind of segued over to being self-employed doing that. And that led to some gigs here and there. It's still kind of where I am. It's a strange market. I live in North Little Rock, Arkansas.
Yeah.
And I grew up in Little Rock. I moved to Austin in 91, and I came back in 2004. And I had been playing gigs since 1980, but I had never sung. So when I came back to Arkansas, I used the cigar box guitar. Actually, I used the slide guitar. This is before I made cigar box guitars. I used the slide guitar to help to teach myself how to sing, because all those years I'd been playing, I had never really sung. I think I tried a couple of times and it sounded so horrible, I just said, okay, that's not going to work at all, and I gave up. But when I started playing slide guitar, I started singing along with the slide, so I could play the melody of the song with the slide and then sing that same melody at the same time. So that's how it all kind of started. Then the cigar box guitars came about, let's see, that was 2004. So I think I started making them in about late 2004, 2005.
Yeah. You're one of the I don't want to say instigators, because that's kind of got a slightly negative ring to it. But yeah, you're one of the instigators.
Yeah, I kind of stumbled across this Yahoo email digest where you would send in questions and then other people would answer, and just an email digest kind of a deal. And I think the first actual introduction to the cigar box guitar was I used to pick up the guitar magazines at the local shops, and they would have these special issues dedicated to, I don't know, rock and roll guitar lessons or dedicated to classical or whatever. Anyway, I saw this book amongst the guitar magazines, and it was a small, not a magazine size magazine, just like a paperback size. Anyway, it was called Make, and it had a cigar box guitar in the front of it. And so really? I thought that's good thing. And it's just like a hobbyist magazine.
Yeah.
Every issue was dedicated to something completely different. Electronics and all sorts of stuff. Mm-hmm. Make your own radios at home and all that. Anyway, so that's how I got hooked on it. I thought that's really, really cool.
Yeah.
And I got on the internet and saw that there were already other people making them. And I subscribed to that digest and read all the other people's questions, and then learned how to make them from listening or from reading their answers to other people's questions.
Wow. It's interesting, because it's a lot of people usually say, it's the I found, discovered it on the internet, or I went to a market and I saw them there. But actually,
right.
have it in a book is really quite cool, because it's not, especially back then. I can understand it more so now, because obviously the appeal of cigar box guitars is a lot greater now than it was, 15 years ago or 16 years ago. But to see it in a book form there like that. Well, I suppose Shane Spiel says the same thing. He saw it. What did he say? I think he said he saw it in a guitar magazine, one of the the Guitar for the Practicing Musician, or one of those ones back when.
Right.
So
right. Well, it took a while to get to the point where it was in mainstream media. 5-6 years, maybe even, and but during that time, I had been. Like I said, I've been playing since 1980, so I knew a lot about guitars.
Yes.
I knew a lot about how to modify them, and not that I was a, professional at it, but I thought, well, this will be kind of fun, because this will give me some visibility with my one-man band thing, which at that point was just the guitar. And I was not, like I said, I was not singing at all. I was playing instrumental slide blues, which is kind of weird. And
like a modification of it, yeah.
Yeah, I was playing the melody of the John Lee Hooker songs and so forth on slide, and then I would do the chords, of course, but I didn't sing at all. I didn't even bother trying, because years before I was like, I sound horrible, I'm not even going to bother trying again. But I sort of kind of morphed into humming along and then singing along with the slide. And of course, all those years, my brain knew how to hit those notes, but I didn't know that.
Yeah.
When I started messing around, there's some friends here in town that were saying, "Why don't you sing?" And I was like, "Oh, I'm not really a singer. I just play guitar." And they kept on saying, "Well, sure you can." And I kept on saying, "No, I can't." But sure enough, within Oh man, I played on the street 2 or 3 times, and by the time the third time showed up, I was hitting some of the notes of the simple blues and John Lee Hooker stuff. I love that funky John Lee Hooker stuff. So I was often.
It's something about John Lee Hooker. It's rhythmic and it's primal, and it's just it kind of really it pulls at something very, very deep down. I think anyone can tap their toe to it. Anyone can find a rhythm to it, and just it's just one of those amazing things that it speaks to you. I think on a very kind of I mean this with the greatest respect, but on that very primal level, a very human kind of thing. It's quite an amazing. It gets me every time I hear John Lee Hooker, and just that voice and that tone in his voice and.
And the simplicity of his chording and so forth, but it doesn't really sound simplistic to the uninitiated ear. And I'd been playing guitar for years and years by that time, and even I was like, "This is going to take a while to figure this out." Well, it really didn't, because I played open tuned and just started sliding around. I knew the scales, I knew the notes. My ear was better than I thought it was, because I never sang. So I just. Like I said, I'd learned songs by ear and so forth, and all those years of doing that helped my brain know what those vocal notes were as well. But I did not know that until I actually started doing it. And John Lee Hooker was a great place to start, because it's one chord, but there's a lot of cool licks in there that make it sound real fancy and real complicated. But in reality, it's really not complicated at all. No,
well, and that's the thing. A lot of people that he played with, people like Stevie Ray Vaughan, Eric Clapton, all these, all the Widdly guys, and when they'd sit in with him, it was always quite a nerve-wracking experience for them, because John Lee would just sit on one chord. He'd just get his rhythm going, just get his boogie rhythm going, and he'd sit on E, and he'd sit on E. And he'd sit on E, and he'd just be playing. And then they'd expect a change to come, and he'd sit on E, and he'd sit on E. and he could literally do an entire song, basically just playing E. You would just be utterly mesmerized, and quite often I've read interviews with them where they'd leave the stage just say, all right, to use a vernacular from today, I just got completely schooled with one chord. It was just
exactly, and that's how I was when I was learning as well, because it took a while initially to figure out what he was doing, but then I slowly realized that it's the simplicity rule, and you don't need to jump around a lot to figure it out. And so at some point, within a month or two, I had a pretty good handle, because I could hear the changes and I could hear the melody that he was singing, and I could duplicate it on the slide. And so I was actually playing way more intricate than he did, because I was not singing. I was playing the melody and playing the riff. If you know what I mean.
I'm a school teacher, and it's funny you're talking about that, because it really relates. It's funny because there's a lot of people on the Facebook group, the Cigar Box Guitar Builder Facebook group, and we've been doing, and I've been doing for a while. I've been doing challenges, like musical challenges, and every now and again the people arc up and they get a bit cross because they say we don't want this. We just want to look at pictures of guitars, and I'm all for that, and I'm saying, I've sent back messages to them with respect, saying, I appreciate your feedback, I really do, but there's a lot of guitars to have a look at here, and there's other groups that only do guitars. We're also interested in getting people to actually pick their instrument up and play, because personally, I believe, and Joe kind of shook his head the last time I said this, but I am going to say this, that the more that you play your instruments, the better the builder you're going to be. Because if you can't play your the instruments that you're building, how do you know how they feel? How do you know that they will play well?
That's a really good point, because when I started to make them, like I said, I knew enough about guitars. I knew how to measure and everything, and bring the strings down and where the bridge should be and all that stuff. But I'd never actually built them. And when I dove in, I realized that I knew enough about maintenance of a regular electric guitar, 6-string, and how to adjust it and everything. So that would have taken me months, because I knew if you don't know anything about that, you have to experiment with this, that, and the other, and finally whittle it down to the 2 or 3 things that really work. But I already knew all that, so I was throwing them together, and they were perfectly in tune, perfectly intonated. Strings were low. I just had to figure out how to make sure the strings were low, and tried 19 different ways to do it over the first year or two, until I finally settled on the 1 or 2 procedures that I stuck with after that.
That's it. And I think that a lot of people get into cigar box guitars. I think the main reason people get into building cigar box guitars, and building specifically, is that they want to use their hands for something. A lot of people come from backgrounds that are not guitar based. Exactly. A lot of people building cigar box guitars are cabinet makers, or they're mechanics, or they're metal workers, or academics. It doesn't really matter where you're coming from, and they're all. But in this day and age, I think another reason why people are picking this up, they're seeing something, and they're seeing a revenue stream, and this is where, for me, you get this crossing of ideologies a little bit. And there's nothing wrong with making a revenue stream from building cigar box guitars. I do it, all right? And it's like, I'm not saying what I do is gospel, but it's like, I understand that it is, for me, it's a business as well as a pleasure. But I think a lot of people get into it, and they'll build 1 or 2, and then they'll try and start selling them before they can even play them. And my suggestion to people when they're doing that is just if you can, hold off. Learn how to play your instrument. Learn how to play it, because you'll probably find on those first few builds that there's things that you want to fix. So that was the thing. But I was just talking about the singing, and I want to get back to the singing for just a second, because a lot of people on the group are very 2 things. One, they're scared to play their guitar on a video. So we do something called a cover band challenge, where, for example, this week we've got Muddy Waters. And, the invitation is, I'll usually put a video up of me playing something horribly. And I'll always sing. Sing along with it. And my idea is to try and get people to upload a video of them singing something, around the theme of the week. I'm actually going to continue the Muddy Waters thing until next week, because I only started it halfway through this week. That's for listeners who are following. The thing is, though, that a lot of people will come on and they'll play the chords, but they won't sing. And my suggestion, this is where I come to my kids that I was teaching. I teach a small class. I have a special needs class and a special education class, and I'm working with kids who've got autism and developmental issues and things like that. And some of them get quite scared about the idea of singing. So instead of singing, I just say, why don't you just talk it? Talk it.
Right.
And this is something that I think that people can do, is that not necessarily having to learn how to sing to start, but just look at the lyrics and talk the lyrics. Because I think the lyrics have got a lot to do with the song. It's not just the music. The lyrics and the music combine to create a message. And I think you do a really good job with your videos doing that.
Well, I appreciate that. That comes back to John Lee Hooker, though, because he didn't really sing. He just talked. And so there were a few notes he was actually hitting in the scale, but a lot of it was just him sort of talking. And so that just kind of hit me just now, that really helped me move forward, because I didn't have to worry about hitting specific notes of a specific melody as much, playing his music. It was more of a talk-sing thing, because he wasn't really singing most of those notes. He was just kind of talking, and then he was playing most of the notes. And that kind of freed me up to just jump right in and try to emulate that.
That's it. Yeah. And it goes to show.
Over time. Yeah, over time, I got better, and this is during the time period where I was in a cover band as well.
Yeah.
But I never sang, and I started singing in that cover band at that point because I was singing with a cigar box guitar. And if I hadn't done that, I never would have sung because I thought that I could not sing. So literally, the cigar box guitar and slide guitar is what helped me learn how to sing.
Yeah. It's see, I've actually just forked out for a one of the new Boss Street Cubes, and so because for me, like, I'm quite happy sitting at home or I'll playing with friends and things like that, but it's just one of those things that I've never. As far as I'll sing, I'm quite happy to sing anywhere in public, but it's always been an issue for me actually just getting up and playing, not by myself, I think more so with other people. I always worry that I'm going to mess it up or my timing will be off, and I struggle desperately with lyrics. I think it's probably got a little bit to do with my dyslexia because I can pick a note, I can pick a tune, someone can play a riff for me, and I can pretty much play the song straight off. By hearing the melody, I can remember the notes, and generally, even when I'm tuning up my guitars, I usually tune them to open G without a tuner. But playing and singing for me has always been a bit of an issue where, because I'm playing, I generally don't. Even my favourite songs of all time, I don't remember the lyrics. While I'm singing it, while I'm playing along, and I can hear the music, I can remember the lyrics, but I can't when I'm. It's almost like I'm not. It's just the lyrics just don't stick in my head unless I'm hearing it. So it's just one of those weird things. But I have bought this cube because I kind of I do want to jump out of my comfort zone a little bit and maybe start playing with some people. And it does have the vocal amps, the amp in it.
Right.
So
that's what I did. I had a little cube and I sang through it and played. And then I got some gigs playing classic rock and solo acoustic classic rock and country and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And I was singing mainly, and this is a real important thing. I was not singing from my diaphragm most of the time, so I had very limited range.
Yeah.
And I really only sing in one or two keys. And because I didn't sing from my diaphragm, I didn't know how. I had read about it, but shy of hiring someone to sit down with for 6 months and show me how to do that, I just didn't know. Well, one day, and because of that, my range was very limited, and that means that my song choices and keys were very limited. So a lot of the songs sounded the same because they were in the same key. Well, eventually, in the cover band that I was in, I played regular guitar and some cigar box guitar. And I started singing a little bit more in that band, and I got to the point where I was singing from my diaphragm. All of a sudden, it came out one day.
Yeah.
I was playing a Midnight Train to Memphis by what's the fella's name? He did I can't think of his name.
I'm not sure.
Anyway,
let's have a little look here. Here we go.
Midnight Train to Memphis.
MEMPHIS. So I always got my computer sitting next to me for little things like this. Midnight Train to Memphis. Is it Chris Stapleton?
Yeah, Chris Stapleton.
Okay, cool. Yep.
And I had been doing some of these, singing a couple of Chris Stapleton songs, and in my band, and I was singing some other in my band as well. We had a female vocalist as well, and I slowly started singing some songs that I could actually sing. Well, when I was working on Midnight Train to Memphis for my solo set, one night I was practicing with the electric guitar along with a YouTube recording of it, and all of a sudden I belted out the vocal, and it had much more power and accuracy, and it was because I was singing from my diaphragm.
There you go.
And I realized that immediately, but I had no idea how how I did. I just stumbled across it one day, and that was about 5 or 6 years ago. And after that, my range is way, way, way better than it ever was. I'm not a great singer by any stretch, but I'm a lot better than I was, and I can sing a lot more different keys and melodies and so forth. So it all started with singing along with the cigar box guitar, and eventually my brain, A, remembered those notes, and B, it kicked into my singing from my diaphragm where I had more power.
I also think it comes down to confidence, because when you're scared, or you're feeling a bit skittish, or you're feeling unsure, you don't have as much control over your diaphragm. A lot of the times you do that kind of chest talking or throat talking, or your mouth gets dry, and you don't feel confident enough to belt out a note. Whereas with you, it might have just simply been that point in time in your, in what you were doing, where you just went, screw it.
I just jumped right in and started to belt it out, which I had been doing. I had been playing that song for a few weeks, and I was like, oh, that's okay, not great, but that's okay. And then all of a sudden, I've got this nice round full tone, and I've got plenty of power behind it, plenty of sustain. And after that, I could sing way, way, way more different styles of songs.
Well, you've got a huge catalog on your YouTube channel. So for anyone who's interested, Blues Boy Jag Cigar Box Guitar, go and check out the YouTube channel, Blues Boy Jag Cigar Box Guitar. There, I think you've got 1,100 videos, and you've got a mix of reviews. You've got a mix of you're playing diddley bows, 3-string, fretless as well. I think fretted. They just got a huge range of videos and how to play videos, and it's all free. It's all just sharing, and this is just such a lovely thing to be able to get people out there and sharing.
I started just using that as a promotional channel for the guitars that I was selling, so people could actually see what they sounded like. Because a lot of people, even to this day, are like, "You can't play on a cigar box guitar. What are you talking about?" So the video showed them what you could do. And then a couple of years ago, I really went head over heels trying to do the lessons and help people out with lessons and so forth. So that's what I've been concentrating on. So
it's bluesboyjag.com is your website, and I would love to have a chat now about your instruments. And I'm just going to your website at the moment. So it's bluesboyjag.com, and it's a really good looking website. I love your emblem, the Blues Boy Jag emblem. It's a great looking emblem. Actually, it's clear. It's kind of it's very vintage kind of looking, but it's great. Lovely colors, very positive looking colors in there too. So the visual literacy on that is actually really quite cool.
Well, thanks. The interesting thing is, in the upper left corner, that logo.
Yep.
I was I was selling guitars in Helena, Arkansas, which is a big blues town, and they had a blues festival going on during this time, King Biscuit Blues Festival. And I believe it was either the King Biscuit Blues Festival that I was actually at in Helena, or one of the other blues festivals, which they've had in years past. But anyway, I was selling my wares, so to speak, my cigar box guitars.
Yeah.
And this fellow was doing these spray paint things where you would pay him $10 and he would do a kind of a random spray paint artwork in about 10 minutes.
Yep.
And anyway, so I said, "Can you do a cigar box guitar painting?" And that's what he did. That entire logo the cigar box guitar and the words and everything he did in about 10 minutes.
Yeah. Well,
I think he charged me 20 bucks for it.
Yeah, I'm the same. Both of my Birdwood Guitars logos, the very first one I used with the Tree of Life, that was a client of mine here in Australia. He was all the way up the top of Australia, up near Cairns. And I think he had something to do with boats and things like that. But anyway, he also did, he was a screen printer or something. And he said, I'd love to buy a cigar box guitar if you. He really loved it. And he said, look, I want to send you, can you send me some pictures of, of things that you do and all that, or whatever. And before I knew it, I had this massive, massive poster, which I've used to this day, and then there was another gentleman, who lives up on the Central Coast here in New South Wales. I'm not going to say his name for respect and for privacy reasons, but he knows who he is. And his daughter actually did the second one, the one that my emblem that has the crossed guitars. So I actually use both, dependent upon, I suppose, the mood of the day. But both of mine have come from clients, which was and friends really who did that for me. So it's rather lovely. It's nice to know that there are people talented out there that can help me, because I'm a talentless hack. So
all I did, I know nothing about art, but I can mess around with stuff on the computer. But I decided I'm just going to take a picture of this T-shirt, because he did the artwork on the T-shirt, and I just put it on the floor, took a picture of it, and that became my logo.
Now, I'm looking at your guitars at the moment. So I'm up on your website at the moment, which is bluesboyjag.com. So everyone jump on board and have a little look. Now, we are talking predominantly today, we are talking to builders. And I always say, whenever I'm talking about someone's builds, and we're on a public forum here, my suggestion is for those people having a look here and looking at what Bill's doing. Bill has a very, very unique way of doing two specific things, and one are your bridges, and I'd love to have a chat about that in a second, and the other thing is your pickups, and I would love to have a chat about that. But the first thing I'm going to say is, just by doing this, there's a caveat here. So my suggestion is to you is just to remember the old phrase, imitation is the greatest form of flattery. Okay, copying something is not. Now, obviously, we all have our own build styles and things like that. We do share between each other, and it's the way the movement goes. But my suggestion is that anything we talk about when we do this, have a think about how how different these are to maybe what you're doing. We're not saying better, we're not saying worse, but it is different. But my suggestion is, when we see something that is as unique as this, my suggestion is always to respect the artist. Okay?
Yeah.
So, right, I'm not exactly comparing you to Picasso, but you know what I mean? It's pretty cool stuff I'm looking at right now. And I've got to say, I know this is in American dollars, so $289, I'm looking at $289 for your Roaring Lion guitar. And I'm looking at that, and I'm sitting there, and I'm converting it to Aussie dollars, because it's about another half on top of that for Australian dollars. So you're looking at what, $420, around about $420 for a cigar box guitar. And I'm looking at that, and I'm saying that is a good price. That is a good, for what you're doing there. And I'm looking at this, and I'm looking at this pickup situation you've got here, and I'm telling you, that to me that looks time heavy.
Well, it is and it isn't, because over the years I've kind of streamlined the process. When I started, there were not that many people making them, and I just kind of followed what everyone else was doing with the transducer pickups and so forth initially. But I hated those. They sounded horrible, and I've always hated them long before cigar box guitars.
It's okay, now Bill doesn't know I'm a big fan of them. That's okay, Bill. That's all right.
Yeah. Nowadays, the quality is much better of that type. But anyway, I decided that I was just going to make my own pickups. So I hand wound my pickups for years, but that was so time consuming that I eventually abandoned that, probably because of the popularity of cigar box guitars. Purchasing actual pickups from China cheaper and cheaper and cheaper.
Yeah.
And
not better and better and better.
right. But the interesting thing is, as technology has been improving over the years with everything, the cheap ones did get better.
Yeah.
As far as they didn't hum as much and so forth. So I moved over to the single coil from hand winding them, single coils and humbuckers. And it used to be 15, 20 years ago, it cost you $30, $40 for a decent humbucker.
Yeah.
Now you can buy them for $10.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And they're good. I mean, to be honest with you, they're, as you were saying, like with everything, it's like when we were kids and you go and buy, you go and buy a cheap Chinese-made guitar and you'd be lucky if you could play the damn thing. And nowadays, the stuff that they're selling, a $200 guitar nowadays is comparable to something that was around about $500 or $600. When I was like back in the early 90s, it's just insane what they're able to do nowadays, and it is quite crazy.
I kind of figured out my own way of putting the pickups in because I decided I don't want to cut a big old hole in these boxes because people choose the box based on the artwork.
Yeah.
And plus I was putting my own artwork on. So I decided I'm going to figure out some way to embed these in the box. So I decided to just basically put screws in that touch the pole pieces of the pickup and embed the pickup inside the box.
Very clever. So initially when I looked at, I see what you're doing now. So you've got on the inside of the guitar, you've got a double thickness where that neck reaches the body, and then you've got a double thickness in there to compensate for for string tension. Because initially when I was looking at, gee whiz, that's a great idea. That is an absolutely wonderful, wonderful idea. It's still time consuming, but you've got to line those up really carefully.
Yeah, that's the hard part. But I've done so many. I'll tell you, there's been many, many times where I've had to scoot over that bolt or that nut just a little bit so it'll be right underneath the string after I've made the entire guitar and put strings on and everything.
So I must admit, I thought initially where with this particular style, I thought this might have been an adaptation of the type of pickup that I've just gone blank on his name now. Charles Atchison demonstrated in his little book. Where you basically you drill the hole through the top, through the neck, and you put the bolts in, and then you actually put a magnet underneath where the bolts come through the bottom of the neck. And then you put a magnet on, like a bar magnet, resting against the screws, and then you wrap the wire around that. So it makes a lot of sense now. But I think you're a genius. I think that is absolutely awesome, and it's very very
I was
clever.
Trying to find. I appreciate that, but I was just trying to find the A, best sounding way to do it, and B, cheapest. And the quickest.
Yes.
And it took me about a year or so to, maybe not that much, but maybe 6 months or so to finally streamline the process where I could do that. The other problem was I was always the way I build mine is I glue the neck into the lid of the box.
Yep.
So I cut out a big old chunk of the wood and then glue it in. Well, if the neck is in the way, it's a real pain in the butt to put the pickup in there.
Yeah.
So what I decided to do was glue the pickup or glue the neck in to a certain length inside, 3 or 4 inches, and then at that point, that's where the pickup goes.
Yeah.
And I figured out how to do all that and align it up just right. But the next problem was the strings were too high.
Yes.
Because I epoxy glued the neck into the box, and the tension of the strings would pull the neck up. So
of course,
I figured out to use the L bracket underneath the neck.
Yep. And
that pulls down the lid over ever so slightly so that the strings are lower.
Yeah. Yep.
And I've stuck with that system for years.
And it
A
works.
lot of people ask me, where's the pickup? Because you can't see it. All you see is the screws, which are the pull pieces. And those screws are intentionally old-fashioned, homemade looking, and they actually touch the pull piece of the pickup, which is inside the box.
And that is important. That's important. Now, let's talk about that bridge of yours. Because that is a great-looking bridge. It covers a lot of things. It covers earthing really, really well.
Right.
And
I don't remember what my early bridges were. I think it was just a piece of wood. And then over time, I realized that the tone is much better with a metal bolt. And I just grabbed a bolt that I had been using for other purposes of this for the same cigar box guitar, and I tested it out.
Yeah.
And just decided to use the bolt. It's a moving bridge. It's a floating bridge. So you have to have the bridge just in the right place for everything to be intonated.
Yep.
But it's very simple.
And I can see the two bolts. You've got two bolts, just two screws just ahead of the bridge, which hold it in place, and the thread of the bolt locks into into where the screws are, so it doesn't slide around.
Yeah, and it's definitely a homemade looking device, which was the whole point. A and B, simplistic, and it's a lot of the old guitars that people would make back in the old days had a bolt for a bridge, and of course the strings. If the strings are too high, when I put the first bolt in, I just have to lower the bolt, get a smaller bolt.
Yeah, smaller bolt. I was just saying. I was thinking that it's easy to. If you wanted something that had a slightly higher action, just get a very slightly thicker bolt, because I can see this on the my father's, the Carlos, the Red Tobacco, and the Jamie Garcia. I can see that there's a couple of different bolts being used. The first one, my father's got the big thicker bolt for a higher action.
Yeah, and sometimes when I make the guitar, I generally follow the same guidelines for each model, but I don't necessarily measure every tiny little thing because I make them all the same. So every now and then I'll have to have either a very low bolt, very small, thin bolt, or one that's extra tall.
Yeah.
That's just how it turn out. And sometimes the box, depending on what the box is made out of, it's going to put more pressure on it and pull the strings out.
Yep. Absolutely.
So I don't know that until I make it. Then I have to go find a smaller bolt.
But they're beautiful guitars, and they've always. I'm so glad I got to talk to you today about them, because they've always had a great appeal to me, and I've always been very interested in seeing them. And the lovely thing is with your YouTube channel is that you get to see them in action, and they sound great.
Yeah, what's amazing is I have a lot of people who ask a lot of questions, understandably, as I would too. Cigar box guitar, really? How's that work? How's this work? How does this work? Can I play this chord? Can I play that chord? Can I tune it to this? Answer is yes to all the above. It just takes a while to kind of experiment with it. Just like any guitar, though. You might buy a Les Paul or a cheap copy or whatever, and you realize the strings are slightly high, and you've done everything you can to adjust it properly, and it's still too high, so you have to put a shim underneath the neck or whatever.
Yeah.
That's extremely common on a regular guitar, and I've been through all those years of messing around with the regular electric guitars, so I knew enough to kind of figure it out.
But that is an important thing. Like having a background.
Yeah, it really is.
Yeah, having a background in music and having a background in actually working on guitars, and even if you're not you don't have to be a trained luthier to actually know your own instrument.
I had to go through that whole period of why is this string buzzing and that string not buzzing, and why is this fret too high and that fret too low, and can I play a major seventh chord and make it sound in tune, or a seventh chord and make it sound in tune? Well, I know all that from playing sixth string for all those years.
Yeah. Well,
so
I learned about intonation from at the age of 17, because my friend, we're all playing, metalheads back in the late 80s and everything and all that. And,
me too.
And it's like, but my friends had gotten a couple of part-time jobs, and my part-time job didn't pay very much. And so when I first got out there, both of my friends ended up getting guitars that had Floyd Rose pickups on them. And
Right.
my little Rocktron guitar Strat copy, single coil Strat copy, didn't have a whammy bar. So I decided, okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to get a locking nut, but I'm going to put it behind the actual nut on the guitar, and I'm going to lock my strings in place. Well, of course, this completely tightened the strings up so what I would do is I'd use a screwdriver down on the bridge to put it back in tune at the nut.
Right.
And which was fine because I really was only using the first 7 frets because I was just riffing, right? But I noticed the further up the neck I came, that the worse it was sounding. And none of my friends knew anything about intonation either. But the fact that I was tuning my guitar, not using the headstock tuners, tuning my guitar using the bridge, the saddles to tighten and loosen. Well, of course, it was throwing the intonation. It was great tuned up at the nut, sounded fabulous. And I could do my dive bombs. I could dive bomb with my whammy bar and come up mostly in tune. And of course, when you were out of tune, I'd retune it again down there, worsening the problem. I think this is the thing. As I come back to you guys, dear listener, as artists and as as Del Puckett likes to say, enthusiasts of cigar box guitars, we always want to get better at what we do, and especially with a fretted instrument. One of the things that I'll come back to again, Bill, is what we're talking about is play your instrument. And this is why I've got on the group. This is why I did the head cut challenge. This is why I do the weekly, cover band challenge. It's for people to actually try and get themselves out of their comfort zone, playing their instruments, and actually getting better at them. Not just get better at playing them, but get better at building them. And it does happen. It does work. It's like you and your voice. The more you do it, the better you get at it.
Well, see, all those years ago, when I was playing in a rock and roll band, I played over time many different styles, and so I learned that guitar is better for this style or for that song, and that guitar is better for that one. And all those years, it helped me tremendously because you make a cigar box guitar and you design it yourself, and you've got the strings way too high. Then you have to figure out how do you fix that.
Yep.
And it's really you have to force yourself. I mean, it's forcing your creativity. And you solve the problem as you encounter them. A lot of them, I got the bridge just fine, but then the strings would be too high, so I put that L bracket underneath the neck.
Yeah.
And basically, you just put a bolt into the neck and a bolt into the through the L bracket into the body of the box.
Yeah.
And you tighten it just enough to where it literally pulls the neck down. Because, see, I don't put a piece of wood in the box itself and then glue or bolt the neck into that piece of wood, because it's more time consuming and it's more wood and it's more weight. So I decided just to put the neck in and use that L bracket to pull the neck down.
Yeah, and they're lovely boxes that you're using too. They're beautiful looking boxes, and they've got lovely thick sides on them. And I totally get that. So this is the thing, when what you're talking about is basically experimenting. You're talking about unforced errors creating awesome learning opportunities. And this is the thing that, it's hard to say to people sometimes, because some people, can be very down on themselves. Some people can be very, when they feel that something hasn't gone wrong, it's a feeling of failure. And and this is something that we learn as kids. It depends on, especially if you were kind of growing up in the 80s and you went to school in the 80s or the 70s. Failure was always a ruler across the knuckles. So you didn't do that, like whack. And it was a different time, and I think a lot of people our age sometimes, we look at the latest generation of kids that are coming through. They're given everything, and they're all told that they're wonderful. You know what? There's nothing wrong with that. Telling somebody that they're wonderful and that they're worthwhile. And I'm talking about your friends here on Facebook. If someone's down, help pick them back up, because a lot of people, especially our age, mate.
Well, see, that's a good point, because I was kind of a shy kid, I was the short kid with the bright red hair and the freckles, and I wasn't very good at sports or anything like that. And I was a dinky little kid, so I was kind of on the outs from the beginning. And over time, I learned A, how to play guitar, B, I learned all that stuff about amps and pedals and all that stuff. And the next step for me was to try to be self-employed after I started making the cigar box guitars.
Yep.
And when I'm talking to my customers, they ask me questions about the bridge and how I make this and how I adjust this and so forth. And apparently I don't do it the same way that most people do, because they were asking, well, how does that work? And really? And they seemed like, instead of being excited or surprised, they're literally acting as if I'm crazy because I do differently than everybody else. But I had no idea, because I just started messing around with them in my back room in the laundry room 20 years ago. And over time, I figured out how everything works. And they would say, well, how does that L bracket work? What does that do? And I say, well, if you screw it tighter about 1/8 of a turn, no more, it pulls the neck down about 1/4 of an inch, which is a lot. And they're like, 1/4 of an inch is a lot? Well, on a guitar, yeah, it is.
It is.
And so sometimes I have to explain, because I didn't really follow what everybody else was doing. I kind of got the basic gist of it.
Yeah.
And I kind of thought, because I had been fixing computers for years, I'm more of a hands-on person. And my motorcycle and my bicycle back when I was a kid and all that stuff. So I just basically started trying different things until I got everything figured out.
and I think you're right. I think this is the thing. Is that what I'm noticing on the group are a lot of first-time builders coming on board and getting quite... A, they're getting worried. B, they're getting a bit cross with themselves when things aren't working out. Because I think a lot of people are coming online and wanting to be their first cigar box guitar to be the kind of like their number one. You know what I mean? They want it to be perfect.
Right.
Well, you're in for a very, very big learning curve. And the thing is that, and I'm not trying to dissuade anybody from doing it, but what I'm saying to people is, be prepared for your first guitar to be a lesson in almost what not to do.
Exactly. And see, like I was telling you earlier with being shy, and I only got along with the shy, quiet kids and so forth. I was kind of a loner in some ways. Well, because of all that, I figured out how to do a whole bunch of things by myself. Learned how to play guitar, learned how to play different versions of songs and different types of stringed instruments. I figured out the tuning and so forth. So it wasn't that big a deal for me.
Yeah.
Experiment with these cigar box guitars, and it took a good year and a half before I finally zeroed in on the build process.
Before I started building cigar box guitars, I built a couple of electric guitars from scratch. I bought myself a book and almost completely read the book from top to cover, and it was a Strat. And I had plans for a Strat, had everything, and I basically just didn't listen to a single thing. And, and I did it myself. But it took me a year of 40-minute afternoons. I'd come home from work. I'd even less time. And I remember, this is before I had my workshop under the house. I'd sit in the front yard here with my little tin shed, and I'd get my wood out, and I'd get my little table horse out, and I literally built an electric guitar using files, sandpaper, hand saws, glue, clamps, and very, very, very little else. I don't even think I didn't even have a fret saw. I don't know. I think I went to our local hardware store and just tried to get any kind of saw that would work. And it was a whole year of building this guitar. Yeah. And finally when I put it together, I realized that I'd put the bridge in the wrong, but it wouldn't play, it wouldn't intonate. And I realized that I'd put the bridge an inch out. I'd gotten the measurement, but as soon as I put the bridge back in the right spot, it sounded fantastic. And
exactly.
But But
that was that's what surprised me.
Oh, yeah. There's no way I could sell it. Do you know what I mean? Like, there's no way that I could sell that guitar because it was awful. It was absolutely horrible.
Once I figured out the fretting, I didn't know how to cut frets, so I thought I'm just going to use, for my first 5 or 6 initial builds, I'm going to use toothpicks.
Yeah.
And that will help me figure out where the frets go and how high the strings end up being and all that stuff. And then I went to the next step and actually bought the fret saw, and it took me a good, I don't know how long, 2-3 months of making different models and throwing away 50% of them, of the necks, until I figured that out. Then it was the bridge. Then it was the string height. Then it was the tone of the pickup. Then it was the buzzing of the pickup and the grounding. And it was one thing after another. But over time, I finally figured it out.
Well, all my guitars, I think I reckon the first 100 guitars that I made and was selling at markets, I would say that 80% of them were piezo.
Yeah.
Maybe 25% of them were electric, but none of them were earthed. None of them were earthed. They all kind of buzzed when you. But it was simply because it was one of those things. It's not that I didn't do it on purpose. It's just simply I didn't think about it because my style of playing, because I chug everything. Yep. Like I generally, my palm sits on the bridge, and it was, or behind the bridge. It was just my style of playing. Is my hand usually rests somewhere on the strings, and it was only really when someone said to me, "My guitar's buzzing," and I said, "Really?" And he says, "Yeah. Whenever I take my hand off the strings, it buzzes." And it was almost like a light went off in my head. And I'm going to, excuse me, guys, I'm going to say an expletive here. And I just went, fuck. Because I just realised that those maybe 20 or 30 guitars that I built using pickups, I hadn't earthed them. So I've always had a thing. And from that day on, I've always had a lifetime guarantee on any guitar that I build. Like build quality wise, I call it a fair wear guarantee. I used to work for an old suiting company here in Australia called Ruben F. Scarf, kind of moderately famous suit company from like the 70s and the 80s and 90s, I suppose. And and they always had something called a fair wear guarantee, and I carry on a fair wear guarantee. Yeah. And one of the reasons I've got it is I know the guitars I'm building now, I know realistically there's nothing going to happen to them because I know the way I build them, and I know they're pretty much indestructible, and I'm very confident with them. But the main reason I've got that guarantee, I think, is for those 20 guitars that I sold back in 2012. Because if they come back and the guy says they're buzzing, I'm going to fix it for free. Don't worry about that.
Well, you wouldn't believe all the trouble I had with various pickups in the day and figuring out how to ground it. And even to this day, 20% of them, even though I make them all the same way with the same parts and same grounding procedures and all that stuff, even now, 20% of them, I can never get rid of the buzz.
Well, okay. Well, one of the reasons for that is, of course, if you're using single coil pickups, the buzz is 60 cycle hum. You won't get rid of it. Right. You won't. You just won't get rid of 60 cycle hum. But
the weird thing is, I can use the same brand pickup on 2 identical models, and one will buzz and the other one won't.
One's probably wax potted a little bit more than the other, potentially. It could be the amount of coil because let's be honest, that as much as things have improved over time out of a lot of the factories and stuff like that, they're still not perfect, and they're scatterwound. So, each pickup is wired. You get one pickup, put it next to another one, it's exactly the same. They're gonna hum differently. They're going to. It's just a crapshoot. But the thing is, when you're using a single coil pickup, the secret is when you're not playing it, turn the bloody thing off. If you don't have a volume control on the guitar, you can buy a volume pedal from any like off eBay. You can buy a volume pedal for $30.
Sure, yeah.
And all you do is when you're not playing it, flick it off. My favourite YouTube show, realistically, is a show called That Pedal Show, right? And the two guys on that show, I absolutely adore that show. There's so much learning happening on that show, and it's fun.
Yeah, I love those guys.
Yeah, well, I mean, Dan's just an amazing guitarist. He's an expat Aussie, so I watch it for that as well because, you know, oi, oi, oi. And then you got Mick from the Guitarist magazine that he was the best editor that they've ever had. He was amazing, and he's still brilliant on this show, and he plays beautifully. But you watch those guys play, every time they stop playing, bam, that pinky finger on that volume control, bam, they just turn it off, and it's as easy.
That's exactly what I do.
Yeah, it's as easy as that.
And see, the more professional, for lack of a better term, someone is, if you're a professional performer, then you would already have known all that. And I did know a lot of that when I started making these because I had been gigging for years. So a lot of people who will call me and they'll say, it buzzes when I use this amp, or it buzzes when I'm in the back room instead of the front room, you know, and it doesn't buzz in the front room. There's always something.
Yeah. Is your amplifier plugged into the same circuit that your fridge or washing machine is on?
Yeah, exactly. and I've had so many conversations over the years because a lot of people who buy cigar box guitars, it's their first guitar. Yeah. And
single coil pickup. This is why you generally see. Now, personally, on a cigar box guitar, I love a single coil pickup because it's direct, it's punchy. It sounds incredible with fuzz. I'm sorry, humbucking pickups sound better with distortion. They do not sound better with fuzz, in my humble opinion. But I'm a massive single coil fan. I absolutely love them. And, I rue the day that I sold my Mexican Strat because I was going through it I didn't get it because I wasn't playing a lot of blues at the time when I sold it. And now I've got a Strat which has got a humbucker in the bridge, and I'm telling you, I'm absolutely missing my old Strat because I want that single coil back in the bridge. But
well, I'll tell you, I bought a Jazzmaster a few years ago, and I had been listening to a couple of guitar players. I can't remember the fellow's name. He's a blues player out of Chicago, and he had a really clean sound. Is hard to explain. He could get it cranked up too, of course, but he had this certain sound. So I bought it at Guitar Center. It was on sale, and it's without a doubt the best electric I've ever owned. It was a Squire model, cost $400, and it's pristine. I can play assisted living gigs where I'm playing really quietly electric with my little dinky cube amp. And I can crank that up. I played a couple of gigs recently where I plugged my guitar directly out of my cube amp into my original Bose PA.
Yes.
With all my distortion pedals and all that stuff. And it sounded absolutely otherworldly. Yeah. I love that guitar. But over the years, I've learned from having all these other electric guitars since 1978, I've learned how to tweak them, how to fix that. Mm-hmm. Without all that experience, there's no way in heck I could tell you that I would be able to make a cigar box guitar.
Yeah. Yeah.
You have to have years and years of experience. You have to know that if I stand on this side of the stage, close to that stage light, I might get some buzz. Yeah. And if I do this and do that, you have to have all those years of experience.
But having said that, it's not like those years of experience are awful and horrible and nasty. It's like it's one of those things where it's little incremental things that you pick up. It's little things that you learn. So, listener, if you're a beginner, we're not trying to freak you out, but it literally is. Every single time you pick up your tools to build an instrument, you're going to have a learning experience, and that's the thing I would love for you guys to be able to take away from this.
I think that's a very important way to look at it, as a learning experience, rather than, here's a problem, because I had been through all that before. So I saw those quote problems coming up. I didn't even see it as a problem. I thought, okay, let's investigate further. Yep. Also, my dad helped me with that, because when I was a kid, he was a handy guy, and he would his own cars, his own Cadillacs and Lincolns and so forth, and I would help him out from time to time to the best of my ability. But the thing that I really learned was watching how many things he had to try before he was on the right track, A, and B, how many different things he had to do after he was on the right track to actually fix it.
Yeah.
And I learned that long time ago. So it didn't bother me in the least to bump my head against the wall for 4 days to finally figure out what the problem was.
Well, I mean, I'm the same case at the moment. I've been building guitars I've been building guitars since 2010. I've been building cigar box guitars from around about the end of 2013. And, 2012? Somewhere around about there. I'm starting to forget. And here's the thing. There's a young lady who's got a YouTube channel, which I've horribly forgotten the name of. And she introduced a little while ago a circuit for a preamp, and it absolutely blew my mind. And so I'm in the process at the moment of trying to teach myself how to actually to put this circuit into a piezo powered guitar, because as we know with piezos can be problematic for a couple of reasons, especially if you don't know where to place the piezo. Just stick it under the neck. Don't put it on the top of the box. Stick it under the neck. Put it under the bridge, in between the bridge and the top, or simply glue it underneath the neck where the bridge is on a through-neck style, and you're going to and attach it to a volume control, because the volume control will act as a capacitor, all right, on the very beginning of the curve. Here we go. This is the girls' website, and I would love for everybody to jump on this website and give her a bit of support. It's called Psych Electroacoustic Opera Company. And honestly, she's got some great ideas. Hang on. There we go. This is her. Okay, so it's called Psych Electroacoustic Opera Company. And she's great. She's got some really, really cool ideas. She builds very old-fashioned kind of junky-looking, with respect, cigar box guitars. But she, I've considered myself a pretty well-versed, guitar builder and fairly knowledgeable about guitar design and things like that. I build effects pedals. I build cigar box amplifiers, which are basically just effects pedals in a box almost.
Right.
But I'm learning. I'm still learning. This lady's on the internet, and I'm learning something cool from her as well.
I'm always learning, and when I get questions from my customers, and they say, "Well, can I play? Is it in tune?" Yeah, I intonated, so all strings are in tune. Well, how can you differentiate playing, let's say, country music on it versus electric guitar, rock and roll?
How can you answer that?
I just say it's just like any other guitar that you buy. Any other guitar you buy, you can play any style of music you want on it, but you might have to tweak it a little bit depending on what style of music you want to play. And then they say, well, how does that bridge work? It's just a bolt. I mean, it's not a bridge, it's just a bolt.
Yeah.
And I'll say, well, it's not an adjustable bridge because it doesn't need to be. I've already adjusted it permanently to the proper height for this guitar.
Look at look at jazz guitars. Look at jazz guitars with rosewood bridges. They're not adjustable. You can adjust the height on them, but the intonations set. Yeah. Look, it's a flawed instrument. The cigar box guitars are a flawed instrument. Actually, they're never going to be absolutely perfect. And if you think
actually, every instrument is flawed in some way.
Totally.
Because I've got mandolins. Not that I would consider myself a mandolin player, but I know how to tune it. I know how to intonate it. I know all that stuff. I'm helping my friend who's learning how to play mandolin figure it out. She has a really old mandolin her dad had, and it was kind of cheap back in 1950.
Yeah.
And trying to figure out how to get it intonated, and I try this and I try that and I try that. And she's like, man, this is crazy. This is taking forever. We're talking 6, 8, 10 hours, one or 2 hours here, try that, didn't work. 1 or 2 hours there, try that, no, that didn't work. But over time, you figure it out. And when I started making these cigar box guitars, I was really worried. I was like, man, I'm going to get a whole bunch of people that are going to say, the 5th fret buzzes every time I use my distortion pedal.
Yeah.
Or I can't do a major 3rd chord because or major 7th because that major 3rd is sharp. And all the stuff I went through years ago. Guess what? nobody has complained about any of that stuff because they've figured it out. Because it's not. They don't have to worry about building it. All they have to do is worry about playing it. And I've taken care of the building part of it. And I'm not saying I'm amazing and all my guitars are perfect every single fret, but they pretty much are, or I wouldn't ship it.
Yep. One of my favourite guitars is this one by Darren McDonald, our admin and my usual co-conspirator in pain here. And this is my favourite guitar. But the first fret on the high string does this. Yeah. And it buzzes. And you know what? I love it.
That's what's fun about playing music, especially guitars, is I'll use different guitars for different shows just for fun, and I'll throw myself into the lion's den by playing some old beat up guitars that have an amazing sound, but maybe I can't play a bar chord on the 5th fret. But other than that, everything's perfect.
Yep.
You know?
Yep. Absolutely.
These old guitars,
Bill,
pickups sound incredible.
Bill, I could talk to you for hours and hours and hours and hours, but we've run out of time.
Well, that was quick.
I know, it's an hour and 10 minutes. I was talking to Darren saying, I want to get these shows down to 40 minutes, and it's just impossible. It's just impossible because it is a conversation. Because when you first start, a lot of the times, and this is for the listeners, it's because a couple of people have gone, wow, they're long shows. But when you're having a conversation with someone, especially someone that you haven't spoken to before, the first 10 minutes is basically just kind of getting to know each other, kind of feel the ground a little bit, see where we're kind of sitting, where we're kind of, how we're getting along. And then all of a sudden, the people who are talking just relax. And
they don't even notice how long they are.
That's it. You just start talking, and you're talking about something that you're passionate about. So,
exactly.
In closing, mate, I always ask 2 questions. The first question is the very first one is, what's the most important tool in your shop?
That's a good question. Probably the fret saw.
Yep.
If the fret saw doesn't work that well, or if it's kind of dull, then the fret's going to be too high. Also, it has to be perfectly straight, otherwise you're going to be not intonated. So that's either the fret saw or the neck itself.
Yep. Very good. Second question, what is your tip for aspiring builders? One tip.
The best tip I can think of is be prepared for problems and attack them with gusto when you are ready, when you're in the mood. Don't get freaked out. Don't just go slow and easy, and sort of keep the information that you learn in your head.
Yeah. And ask the people on the group. That's what the group's there for. Exactly. That's what the group is there for. If you're really stumped, if you're really feeling frustrated, reach out. That's
Don't be afraid also to try wacky things. Yeah. I have done that many, many, many times, and they have turned out to be my default build procedure.
Well, what's the worst case scenario? Like, let's
exactly.
be honest. It's exactly. when you're starting out, start out on the crappiest boxes that you can find.
That's what I did.
Grab a grungy old box. Use an old wooden shoe box or an old, even if it's a tin can or something like this, something that'll act as a resonating chamber.
Right.
And, you got, $5 worth of timber from your local hardware store to start off with. Bugger doing frets. Don't do frets to start out with.
That's what I told myself when I first started making these, because I had never gone into business for myself.
Yep.
And I had never made anything for sale ever. And I was like, well, what's going to happen? Either it will work or it won't work, but it'll be fun trying.
That's it. Now, I think people are forgetting that. They're wanting to get onto the group. They're wanting to build their very first cigar box guitar, and they're wanting it to be perfect. I got news. It's not going to be perfect, but it's going to be cool.
Not going to be perfect. Exactly.
It's going to be cool. That's why I always suggest start with a fretless, because that's what the old guys did. That's what the guys did. That's what that's what John Lee Hooker did. That's what all of these guys in the South, all these guys picking up guitar, couldn't afford normal guitars when they were kids. You know, because people
Exactly.
forget that the cigar box guitar was something that was also created by kids, because mums and dads
Well,
didn't want to fork out hard-earned money on a guitar that might have been thrown in the corner.
Well, the only other thing I can think of to add to that is be patient. When, not just when you're building one, but when you're playing one, or when you're learning how to play one you just bought. Be patient. Get to know it. Get to understand that if I play this chord here, that string might go sharp, so therefore I need to either adjust the neck or the bridge, or play my playing style, use a light pick, heavy pick, use your fingers, try everything, because that's what I did when I started learning how to play regular guitar back in the day.
Yeah.
And over time you learn these tiny little important things, and eventually there are no more problems anymore. There are only experiences.
That's it.
And it's more of a positive way to look at it.
Yeah. All right, Bill. Mate, thank you so much for your time this morning for me, this afternoon for you. Have a wonderful evening.
I appreciate it.
Please stay in touch. It's been an absolute pleasure talking with you today, mate. And I'm sure Darren and Joe are going to be right miffed that I got a chance to do this and they didn't. So to them.
Well, I couldn't think of a better thing to do on a Saturday afternoon.
Lovely, mate. All right. Well, all the best. Thank you so much, and I'll talk to you soon.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
Thanks, Bill. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Well, that was Bill Jagitsch from Boy Jag Guitars. Head on over to bluesboyjag.com to go and check out what he's doing. Go and check him out on YouTube at... go and find it again. On Blues Boy Jag cigar box guitar. He's got a huge amount of videos, how-to videos. So if you're starting out and you're just learning how to play, that would definitely be a place for you to go and check out. If you want to see what I'm doing, you can go to birdwoodguitars.com. I have just started uploading some guitars, some cigar box guitars that I build for the YouTube channel. I'm actually uploading those guitars now onto the CBGbuilder.com, our website for this show. So yeah, if you, they're there. So if anyone wants to purchase a cigar box guitar from that's been used on the show, I generally jazz them up a bit. I put piezo pickups in them. Last video that I did on the channel, you'll notice that didn't have a piezo. I've actually have installed a piezo and done a couple of things with it since, so I always update them a little bit, and they're there. So have an amazing day. Go out to your workshop, build something awesome, build something cool. If there's anyone that you want me to interview, please leave a message here. Please leave comments. Give us a 5-star review on iTunes, wherever YouTube, wherever you're looking. It really, really helps the algorithm. Remember that we are the only cigar box guitar podcast out there. So thanks again for listening. Really appreciate your time, and we will see you next week. Bye.